Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. Another school shooting. We know from various sources that in the year 2024, about to conclude, there have been more than 80 separate school shootings. We have a problem. And so several of you have asked me a question which, is hard to answer. What do we do? I must confess that when I heard the report yesterday morning, and I listened very carefully, I started to cry. I cried for the tragedy and for the impotence which many of us feel. And my younger son, Joel, asked me, "Why are you crying?" And my answer deep in my heart was, because Joel, it could have been you, or it could have been Samuel. It could have been my own children. Why? Because we refuse to act on the real problem, the proliferation of guns and their availability. That's the simple truth. Now, the question that several of you asked me was a very simple one, a very direct one. What can we do about it? With Donald Trump about to enter the White House, with the Republicans controlling the Senate and the House, there's nothing we can do. I hate to say that. It pains me beyond words to have to say that there's nothing we can do. But that's true. We are going to continue along the same path. And the story which we have heard repeatedly about shootings in schools, and yes, other venues as well, is going to continue. In order for there to be any action taken, a national will must resolve to try to do something. And yet, to be honest, we've thrown up our hands. We've given up. In the face of the Republican Party's commitment to lack of gun safety, yes, and Donald Trump's commitment to the National Rifle Association, and yes, Republican control of state legislatures across the country, there's nothing that's going to happen. There won't be anything we can do. But I want to reflect on it for a moment. You would think that after Donald Trump was shot, and there were 2 assassination attempts, that somebody would stand up and say, it's time to do something. I remember the days when getting a rifle was something you could see an advertisement for in a comic book. Do you remember when that disappeared? When John F. Kennedy was killed on November 22nd, 1963. And do you remember the availability of handguns? And yet, after Robert Kennedy's assassination, there was a move to restrict access to handguns. In fact, Lyndon Johnson signed the 1968 gun control bill, and if you Google his message at the time, he said, we have to do something. And remember, Johnson was from Texas. He owned guns. He shot guns. And yet, we seem to be completely immobilized. Here in San Francisco, I remember vividly when Harvey Milk and George Moscone were killed by a member of the Board of Supervisors, Dan White. And I remember vividly thinking, maybe this will cause us to do something. And then again, I had that same feeling after Sandy Hook. And you see the ads by Sandy Hook survivors. They appear online and on television and just about everywhere you go. And yet, even with another tragedy at a Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin, a 15-year-old girl, the shooter. And of course, she killed herself. And so we'll trace all of the social media posts and so forth, and eventually, hopefully, there'll be some answers. But the real point is that we find ourselves in the position of having our hands tied. Indeed, when there are gun buybacks, as we have had in our own community, there are criticisms. Why are you trying to take guns away? And indeed, during the late presidential campaign, there were some who suggested that if the Democrats won the election, we would lose our right to our guns. It's a curious thing. A gun is a lethal weapon, but it's an inanimate object unless we, people, use it. By the way, the same thing applies to an automobile. I just got myself a new car. And when I got my car, I had to produce my driver's license. I had to produce the insurance. I had to produce all the documents necessary in order to receive the right to own an automobile. Well, the argument is made, but an automobile is different than a gun. An automobile isn't mentioned in the Constitution, but the Second Amendment guarantees our right to carry a gun. I guess that argument can be made, but why not extend the idea of an automobile to the Second Amendment? Why shouldn't you have to have a background check? Why shouldn't you have to have pass a test and have insurance if you own a gun? Why isn't there a method of ensuring that gun safety is observed in people's homes? I know that what I'm saying is not new, and I know that many of you feel strongly that any intrusion on the right to bear arms is an attack on the Constitution, the Second Amendment. I want to suggest to you what we learned yesterday and what we keep learning more than 80 times this year is that there is an attack taking place on our children, on our communities. Do we have the will to try to do something about it? Will Republicans who control the White House, and the Congress, do something about it? And if not, are we doomed to this perpetual circle of violence? There are a lot of things I could have talked about this morning, but I want you to know that I chose this topic because, well, it's painful. It hurts. And yes, I shed a tear. Not just for the children who died and the teacher who died. I shed a tear for us because every time this happens, a little something inside of all of us realizes that we could have done something to prevent death. Just maybe. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. I remind you every day that is our goal. I want to say a special thank you to Gogo Zoger, because Gogo is the wonderful producer of this program. And by the way, we also check LinkedIn and Facebook and the messages you send me individually. We want to know what you think. And ladies and gentlemen, we will keep up with you as you make your comments right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you tomorrow.